Hey guys, welcome to the video. I'm way super late on getting these uploaded, but here they are. This is the first video of the recap. As some of you may know, we play D&D, and I am the Dungeon Master for our group, which is a part of a mercenary organization called the Chain. The Chain was started by a warforged spellslinger who had this idea to start a adventuring guild that could go around and do good and slay monsters and overthrow oppressive governments and all of these things. And so, long time ago, Slick, the warforged spellslinger, a former character of mine, started the Chain. And so our players are Hestia, which is a blue tiefling, probably the only blue tiefling in my world. She is blue because she is an oracle of some cosmic entity that has blessed her and given her these divine powers to do and to carry this message and to be kind of their hands and feet in Orden, the name of the world that our campaign takes place in. The other player is Yuri, and he is a orc barbarian, and he was a Hell Knight in the Abyss, slaying demons and whatnot, and was imprisoned by some demon lord in a cell in some sort of magical sleep for hundreds of years, and has been reawoken now. And so he wanders the world trying to find his purpose and his place. And the other one was Donis. He was a lion folk paladin of Abadar, which is like the lawyer god. And so he was going around doing all sorts of legal work and trying to get the beast folk nation established. The beast folk in my setting were all enslaved up until recent time, just before the campaign takes place. So he was busy working on that, and all three of these found the Chain being their best option to pursue their goals. And so, to spare you some of the details, and for the sake of time, they go through a set of tests, of 5 tests, to get into the Chain to see if they're worthy of being a member of this adventuring guild, and which they passed with flying colors. Then they are sent as part of their test to this decrepit ancient tomb called the Hall of Heroes, and there they battle some goblins, and inside of a invisible chest, a spectral chest, a creation of my own design, that they saw within a mirror, that when they looked into the mirror all along the walls of the dungeon, they seen into the ethereal plane. And so seeing that, they see this spectral chest, and going up to it, they find within it one of 7 swords known as the Teeth of the Dragon. Little did they know it at the time that Yuri the barbarian had the second teeth of one of the swords of the Teeth of the Dragon. And these swords, just a little bit of background on them, they are magical sentient swords that were created for nefarious purposes, and their creator was imprisoned in some sort of cosmic jail, and his swords were scattered across the cosmos, so he could never get his hands on them again. These swords, there are 7 of them. They are stronger the more of them that are in the same place. If they are closer to each other, they are more powerful. They also scale in power with the wielder. And so it is super bad if this big bad guy were to get all 7 of his swords back again. And so now they have 2. They've stumbled across 2 of them. And the one they find, which deals necrotic damage, and is called Spiritus. And when looking into the blade of the sword, you can see into the ethereal plane. It reflects. You can see a reflection of the ethereal plane. What they do not know is that attached to it is another creation of mine, a scrying spirit. And this spirit is reporting back to someone on the other side. they go back. They go through a couple different little side missions, some side quests. Nothing major happens. And Hestia goes into the library of the chain, where they have this whole district set up in this town of Ironport. She goes into a library and there meets another tiefling called Constantine, who is I cannot remember off the top of my head the name of his class, but he deals with, he's a spiritist. And so he moves spirits from one plane to where they're supposed to be going, basically like a spirit guide, so to speak. And so she comes in and he sees this scrying spirit attached to her sword and says, hey, are you going to do something about that? To which she says, what? And then he kind of teaches her some different things about how to deal with this scrying spirit, all within a sanctuary spell, so that the scrying spirit cannot report back currently to whoever is scrying on her, and teaches her basically how to see them, trains her how to see them and how to fight them, and then it's initiative. She fights this scrying spirit, which I used a wraith for. I just reskinned a wraith, gave it some different abilities, some different stuff, and so she takes this thing out. It deals some necrotic damage, lowers her maximum hit points for 24 hours. Not a real big deal. And then he says, hey, what's the deal? Why are you blue? Asks through all these questions. And so then begins their quest to find the other 7 swords of the Teeth of the Dragon. And they begin looking for these different teeth, but in the meantime, there's some spooky stuff that happens. One night, as a few of them are on guard duty, there is a woman. One of them sees and encounters a woman who is decrepit and wretched looking, going and taking and putting something into a well in Ironport, and he's not able to see what it is. Yuri isn't. Donis isn't. But as he approaches, she laughs and puts whatever it is into the well and runs off. And so she runs down an alleyway, and there, an innocent bystander, a woman, an elf, is standing there, and Donis is trying to quell the situation. The hag laughs and slits her throat, and black blood just begins oozing everywhere, spraying all over the woman and the ground. While this is also happening, Hestia is on patrol in town, and there she meets a little girl, very wretched looking again, and when the little girl covers her eyes, she becomes invisible, and so she is running around, and from her hands she is emptying these black looking little mice that scurry all over the place, and the little girl, she laughs, waves, and disappears right from in front of Hestia's face. Yuri is the one that is on the he's on the wall, the city walls. He is guarding the walls, and from there he sees these little lights from all over the town. He's not exactly sure what's going on, and so but he sees that something is happening in the middle of the night all across town, which is very bizarre. And so from there, Donis demands that the well be destroyed, that it be collapsed, and so no more water can be drunk from that well. And little did he know, what she was putting in the well was actually a heart, a black heart that was pumping black blood. And black blood in my campaign, and I think in the lore of Pathfinder, is it is actually blood. It's necrotic tainted blood that is used to make living things no longer living. And so they were trying to plague the town, and the rats were black blood rats that were going to go around and plague the town. And so they liked that little spooky encounter. And so the next day they begin investigating. They go and they talk to the woman who had the blood splattered on her, and that black blood had gotten in her eyes and she become blind. And so I introduced a senior officer of the chain, an Aarakocra, an eagle person that is a high-level paladin of some sort. And he heals her blindness and gets from her a report of what she saw and what happened and all these different things. And they are busy working on all of that and getting all that situated. But all of their loose ends are dead. There's no loose ends. And so they're not really sure quite what happened right there. But it will be important later on. So, next thing. Yuri goes into his room, and on his little nightstand he sees a letter that is entitled to him Hellwalker, which was his name in his previous life. He opens it up and finds that Lady Death, not the one of the four horsemen Death, but a lady, a cosmic ruler of death. She is the one who is in charge of separating the good from the bad and making sure every soul reaches their proper eternal destination. She is also in charge of reapers who enforce death. And so she writes him this letter basically fangirling over him and says that she looks forward to seeing him soon. That she is a admirer of his work and she's been watching and all these different things. So, that's going on. The next morning, Donis had to leave to go and work on some Beast Folk Nation stuff, do some diplomatic things, and he returns a few days later, and outside of town is a tribe of stone giants, and the stone giants invite them to play this game. The chief of the stone giants does, and he has 5 riddles, and if they can solve the riddles, he won't destroy the town, but if they can't, good luck. And so they had a lot of fun going through these riddles. And basically, so for you guys that are dungeon masters that are trying to get a feel for, like, what is this guy doing? The story doesn't seem very cohesive. I was trying to, and I was having a good time, and so were my players, of experimenting with different types of encounters. I gave them several social encounters, I gave them several investigative encounters, a riddle encounter, and so I was trying all these different types of play styles, because my players have never played before. And so I was trying to give them a taste of a little bit of everything. But pretty soon, from that point, the actual story picks up. They go and they take a keep. There is an old abandoned keep in the north, the northern lands. Norden, as the country is called, is not settled. It is not an actual country per se, but it is a bunch of nomadic tribes, Vikings, basically, that are very ruthless and brutal, and not very many civilized people go into Norden, and not very many civilized people make it back out of Norden into Vaslori, which is the name of the country that they're in. So, they journey into Norden, and there they meet a silver dragon. They meet him as he is being shot out of the sky and falling to the ground, and Hestia runs up. Here's the thing. I had planned this scene and was not thinking about her having healing magic. She's an oracle. Of course she has healing magic, and if she didn't, the paladin had healing magic. So that was on me. So this silver dragon is being shot out of the sky. He was shot with an arrow of dragon slaying, which deals massive damage to dragons. So she runs up, stabilizes him, heals him, not nowhere near full health, but definitely gives him a good leg to stand on. And so he looks at her and he says, "A dragon never forgets his debts," and begins to fly off again much lower to the ground so as to not be shot at again. They get to the keep and they find the people that were shooting at the dragons. It is these people of this cult of dragonborns which call themselves the Drakkrell, which is dragon talons in some language. I forgot. I think it might be German was what I used for that. Tip that I learned from another dungeon master is when you're naming things, look for names in other languages that sound cool and invoke the idea that you're going for. So the Drakkrell are there, and so they fight some of them, they fight some monsters, they fight some not baby white dragons, but youngling white dragons. One of them, there were more of them in there, but once they got in there and I realized that they did not have the manpower or the health to knock all of them down, I was like, well, there's one of them in there. And so they have cleared out this keep, and they are arranging, they find a ton of treasure in there, and they're arranging to have this keep remodeled, and they're going to house in this keep, and they're going to live here, and they're going to have all these plans. But they cannot live there until the renovations are done, and I told them it would take several months. So they're like, okay, that's cool, we'll go back to Chain headquarters. They get back to Chain headquarters, and the next morning, it's about to hit the fan. As the sun rises over Ironport, a small black pinhole appears in the sky, and instantly from this pinhole, a floating castle is flying in the sky. They hear a loud, deafeningly loud blowing of a horn, and like so debilitating. I explain it as being like standing in front of a foghorn on a ship, and then all of a sudden, one voice is heard all across the city. No matter where people are at, they hear this voice. Ajax is here, and he is your salvation. And he goes through this whole entire spiel about how the city had sinned, and that he was going to cleanse them of their sins, and that the purest things in the world were pain and suffering, and he was going to cleanse them all. And as soon as he says that, another horn blows, and griffins come, and they are dropping these giant boulders on the city, leveling the town. And if it couldn't get any worse, a death giant, this is an actual Pathfinder creature, a death giant comes out of the portal, and he swears fealty to Lord Ajax and begins scything and cutting down people in the town. Lord Ajax says, spare 500. Now, this is a town of several thousands. This is a big metropolis town, and so he is drastically reducing the number of people in this town. While all this is going on, Yuri gets up and he's gearing up. He grabs his Hellwalker sword, which he got from Lady Death. They met up and had a little conversation. He promised to be one of her Reapers eventually. Once he was done with the chain thing, he would be a Reaper for her. And she said, okay, here's a boon of my gratitude, and gives him this awesome sword. But he leaves behind one of the teeth of the dragon, his Arctus. He leaves it behind. And right after he goes out the door, his partner, Vandal, sees Yuri come right back in and grab Arctus, put it on his shoulder, and take off out the door. All right, Hestia is trying to make her way out of the town as the chain has given the command to get out of Ironport no matter the cost. Flee, do not stay, do not try and fight. And so she's running for her life, and all of a sudden she is circled by these Tengu, these raven-like people wearing these white robes, and they said, Hestia, we don't want any trouble, come with us. She grabs for her sword, and one of the Tengus waves her hand in front of her face and says, sleep. And Hestia falls asleep. They portal out with Hestia. Hestia is nowhere to be found. So Yuri's making his way through the town to the ship, and he turns around and he sees himself running towards him with Arctus on his back. And then he waves, the other Yuri waves at player Yuri and gives him the equivalent of the bird finger in Orcish, and drops his disguise, and he is a red dragonborn toting the teeth, one of the teeth of the dragon, and portals out. Vandal is left in the town, and he escapes to the north, and he tells them that he's heading back to God's Finger Keep, which is the name of their keep, that he's fine, just get out. Donis makes it out alive, and he actually teleported. The way Donis got out, it was actually really cool. Paladins of Abadar have an ability to teleport back to the home base of Paladins of Abadar, which I did not know until he made this character. And I was like, oh, that's neat. Really powerful, but okay, cool. And so he teleported back to the home base of Abadar, and Abadar gives him a boon. He is praying. He said, God, I don't know what's happening. My town is being destroyed. There's these enemies that are after us. I feel so unequipped. And so Abadar, the god judge, gives him his gavel, and it is this huge warhammer, and has all of these magical abilities, to which he was super excited to get. And then this is a little interesting tidbit. The next week, Matthew, the player of Donis, comes to me and says, hey, I know I just got this really cool weapon, but I have this other character idea, and I really feel like Donis would just want to focus on his work with the Beast Folk Nation. He's still going to be a member of the Chain, but I've got this other player I want to play, and having this gavel of Abadar, this boon from his god, he's going to take his work as a paladin of Abadar so much more seriously. So, he says, I want to play this new character. Alright, back to the story. Yuri is on this massive ship outside of port in Ironport, and there he's finding out Hestia's gone. No longer can he find Hestia or Donis, his two teammates. He knows where his partner is gone, that he's gone north, but his other two, he knows not. Donis teleports in to the ship. They're trying to figure out where Hestia is. They do some research. Back with Hestia, she is inside of an asylum called Raven Rock Asylum, and it is ran by Tengus, which I thought was a pretty neat little thing. Not only are they Tengus, but they are psionic Tengus, so they have mind powers, and there she is being experimented on. A little bit of Hestia's backstory. When she got her powers, it came at a price. She hears all of these voices inside of her head, and so part of that is she has to make will saves from time to time, or go into a fit where the voices get too loud and she can't control her magic abilities. And if she fails her will save, I get to pick one of her spells that she casts instantaneously without even meaning to, the effects of which can be disastrous or it can be mundane. But either way, it's a lot of fun. So she's inside of this asylum, and here she hears a message inside of her mind saying, hi, I need help out of here. I'm not from here. They've been experimenting on me. Can you help me get out? And Hestia says, yes, I can totally help you get out if you can help me contact my friends, the Chain. And so she says, all right, I need one of their names. And so just like Cerebro in X-Men, this person who is communicating with her finds, she mentions Constantine, her friend. And so she finds Constantine telepathically, which was the librarian from before. And so she summons her little familiar, which is like this... it's kind of like a raven, but it has two sets of wings and is wearing like a plague doctor's mask. There's a really convoluted name for them. I don't remember what they are, but basically they're a familiar for spiritualists, which she took a 1 level in. And so she summons her familiar and sends a message to Constantine. Only just a few words. Raven Rock Asylum, come and help quick. And so sometime later, Constantine gets the message. They use this really powerful entity that they have access to teleport them where they want to be. And so they teleport to Raven Rock Asylum. They get there, and they have with them the full power of the Chain, the senior officers, and now Yuri and Donis, which got field promotions. They lost 50 people, 50 Chain members died in the attack on Ironport, and so Yuri, Donis, and Vandal all got a field promotion. So they are junior officers now of the Chain. And so, yeah, things move quick when you're playing D&D. And so the senior officers and the junior officers of the Chain, they show up outside of this facility, and they go inside and are greeted by a waiting room, like we would see in a current mental hospital. And they are greeted by the headmistress, who says, what can I do for you, Commander? And to which the players thought, that's weird, how does she know him? I did not explain this, but the Tengu headmistress was reading his mind to see what his name was. So she knew what his name was, greeted him by name. They thought that was really cool. And then the commander says, you have a junior officer of the Chain. We will have them back. To which she responded, no, you won't. We have her legally. Come to find out, they didn't. Having a lawyer on the team came in handy because he asked for a lot of paperwork that I was not prepared to give him as a dungeon master. And so I kind of figured that they were just going to go in guns blazing and it would be this super awesome fight. But instead, the lawyer steps up and says, actually, there might be a legal precedent for us to get her out of here. And so there is. They spring her legally. And to which Hestia says, all right, but I've got some friends I need to grab. In her time there, in her backstory, she made some friends. One with a priest who was there. He was like the local chaplain. His name was Father Brown, and so she rescues Father Brown. I was not planning on him being important, but now he's important. I figured that would be a neat little way of rewarding her for having a deep backstory, and so this NPC is going to be important to her. She knows not how. So she rescues Father Brown. She also rescues the guy who was in the cell next to her, Thomas, who is this mad sorcerer. He is something. She doesn't know what, but he's not normal. He's not a normal race. And he's talking to his spell book and making chicken noodle soup. And so this is Matthew's new character. He is playing a Samsaran, which they live multiple lifetimes. And so he was reincarnated inside of this cell in Raven Rock Asylum, very conveniently. And so she breaks him out, she breaks Father Brown out, and she also breaks out the woman who was helping her. She was this alien figure with 4 arms and massive psychic powers. And so she breaks all of them out, they all leave, and they all go back to the chain ship. When they get to the chain ship, the Samsaran sorcerer Thomas looks at his hand, and he has a symbol of the chain on his hand. Part of joining the chain means you get branded. Somewhere on your body you have a brand that denotes that once you're a member of the chain, you were always a member of the chain. So he goes and he meets Slick, and Slick remembers him when he joined the chain in his first life, and he said, hey, how have you been? And he said, hey, it's been crazy. And so they had a little catching up time. They enjoyed that because Matthew was my DM while I played Slick, and so it was kind of a neat little character interaction between the two of them. Hestia meets up with her new patron that she has. While she was in there, the way she was able to make her escape was this skeleton, this awoken skeleton, poofs in using his magic and says, hey, here's your things. In exchange, I want that sword. Talking about Spiritus, her tooth of the dragon. And she says, well, why do you want it? Why do you need it? He said, because I'm a collector of magical things and I can keep it safe. And you know who wants it, and I don't want him to have it. So give it to me and I'll keep it safe. She doesn't have a lot of options right now, so she takes it. She gets back to the ship and she contacts she contacts the skeleton. His name is Rook, and Rook teleports her to his place, the Arcanium, and there Rook says, look, you can trust me, I need the sword. Give me the sword, I'll keep it in a safe place, and you don't have to worry about it, but I'm getting that sword. I got you out. That was the deal. She was not happy. She did not want to give over the sword, but she did anyways. I was really proud. Because I really kind of thought she would say no, to which there would have been massive repercussions, and she would have died. Had she have not given over the sword, there would have been some serious, serious implications for that. He would not have been happy. And so she goes back, and they figure out, okay, we need to go back to the keep and get Vandal. We came and rescued Hestia, we gotta go get him. So they show up at the keep, and it's nighttime, and outside of the keep now are these tents. There are tents everywhere. They start looking around, and everyone living inside of these tents are Dragonborn. Not only are they Dragonborn, they are chromatic Dragonborn. These are the bad guys. And so they quickly figure out a plan. All right, we need our boy. He's in there. They also deduce, rightly, that these Dragonborns are the Drakkrell, and they're the ones trying to get their hands on the 7 swords of the teeth of the dragon. And so they said, all right, Yuri said, my sword's in there, I'm going to get it. They're greeted by he claims to be a holy man. It is a black Dragonborn, and he's very finely dressed, and he comes out and he says, what's going on? There are a bunch of guards standing around. They seem to think you're an intruder. What's the deal? And to which they respond, this is our castle. Get out. He said, no, you weren't at home. We killed the people that were working on it. We took it. It's ours. They were not happy about that. But they were willing to let it go. This Dragonborn sniffs, he wins the air and says, you, and points at Hestia and says, you have my sword. She actually, in fact, does not have the sword, but since she just got rid of it, the scent of the magical power of the sword is on her, and he is convinced. And so he says, all right, fine. If I kill you, I'm taking the sword. If you kill us, we'll leave. We will not come and we will not try and reclaim this castle for 1 year. Big statement, but they felt pretty confident. So he snaps his fingers, and all of a sudden 3 others, there are 4 of them total, they pop up, and they have a fighter, which is actually a commander. They have a jester, which is actually a rogue. They have him, he is a... he was a spellbreaker. Yep, he was a spellbreaker, so he was an anti-mage, basically. And they had a monk, which was the Scaled Fist Monk, which is a really cool archetype for Pathfinder. If you have a player that is wanting to play a monk, I highly recommend it. They get some really cool stuff, and I souped them up with some special villain abilities that they could do on their turn that the players could not do. And so I was afraid that this fight was going to be a little frustrating for them, but they actually had a great time. The monk, he could instantly teleport using his shadow, because I felt like that was a really cool monk thing to do. He also, because he was a monk of the Scaled Fist, which means basically he was a dragon monk, he could use his breath weapon on his fists to empower his unarmed attacks with fire. The commander, he could give commands to his people and make them go as a reaction. Not on his turn, not on their turn, as a reaction. He could make them go and to do something. They could either attack, they could either move, but they could not do both. The jester, he could pop smoke and give himself advantage on stealth checks. He could make himself invisible. And so he popped some smoke, made himself invisible, got in line to get a serious sneak attack on one of the people. The spellbreaker, he had a rod of... a command rod, or a rod of storing, and so as soon as the new character Thomas tried to cast a spell, he just counterspelled it, but he failed his counterspell check, and so the spell went off as normal. I was pretty sad. And so that was all of their little abilities, and it was a pretty good fight. It was pretty tough. It was pretty well balanced for the most part, and so they had a really good time. I got to deal some damage. They got to deal some damage, and Hestia was fighting without her Tooth of the Dragon for the very first time. She was using a scythe that she found in the keep, which is the Scythe of Life Stealing. I could probably come up with a more creative name, but it was eluding me. I was not feeling very creative at the time when I was giving her this magic item. And so, basically, you deal damage. How much ever necrotic damage you deal, you replenish your own health. Pretty straightforward, but scythes also don't deal very much damage. So I don't feel like it was really overpowered. So they win. They defeat these guys, all except for the Jester. The Jester sees that his team is losing and is like, oh, shoot, I'm getting out. And so he teleports himself out. And will he be a recurring villain, or will he die when he goes back? Who knows? I do. And so on the body of the commander, they find this note, and it says something along the lines of, Commander, we have found the other sword. You are to go there. We have also found an entry point. If you succeed, you will be greatly rewarded, but if you fail, the consequences will be dire. So make sure you don't fail. If you get the sword, we'll be one step closer to our goal. The players do not know what that is yet. And so they take this letter like, oh, this is super important, but also our other sword isn't here. Arctis is not here. That sucks. But at least we got to kick some butt. They're happy. That's where we ended the session. And so that was our most recent session. We just played that one last night. Here's the good news. This was a lot of information. I did not recall it perfectly, and it was not in perfect order. Sorry if it was kind of a lot. But the good news is, from now on, weekly or whenever we play, I will release a update of here's what happened, here's my stuff from behind the scenes, here's what I want you guys to know as my viewers. And if you are one of my players, you better cut this video off right now. But if not, spoilers, here it comes. The Drak Krell are trying to summon their lord that they serve, and his name is Lord Aegon. And Aegon was a fire giant who was a worshiper of Tiamat. and his heart became sinister and full for lust of power. And so he made these 7 teeth of the dragon, and with them developed an army and slew Tiamat. Tiamat is the evil dragon goddess. And so he has now declared himself as a god, but he's locked up. In his attack against Tiamat, he released these 7 titans, which were the beings of immense cosmic power that are used as a failsafe for if the gods ever go rogue. And so he released these titans years and years and years, eons ago, and was locked up for that crime. And so now his members are trying to, number 1, get their swords back. Number 2, they're trying to summon Aegon to the material plane. Bad news. So now they have to decide whether they're going to go after Ajax, which is hurting more people directly, or if they're going to go after Lord Aegon, who is kind of doing things behind the scenes. It is a lot of fun, and I really look forward to playing again. But hey, till I see you again, keep the faith, and peace out.